Chapter 15. The Phenomenal Universe. The wise have ever asserted the phenomenal universe to be but an appearance in spirit, and yet spirit is seen to be indivisible and changeless. The phenomenal universe is perceived to have been created in the essence, nature, substance, and very being of spirit, but spirit itself is and remains ever inseparable and immutable. This is a very important point of teaching and should be considered carefully in order that its full meaning may be grasped and assimilated. The term created means brought into being, caused, produced. It is sometimes defined as to form out of nothing, but such definition is meaningless, for the laws of thought show that the mind is incapable of thinking of something having proceeded from nothing. In speaking of the phenomenal universe as created in the essence, nature, substance, and principle of spirit, the preposition in signifies situation or place with respect to surrounding, environment, encompassment. It is generally associated with position or place in space because of its ordinary employment in connection with material objects. But it is also used in connection with mental states and ideas, as, for instance, in the mind, in thought, in imagination, thus showing that it is not necessarily related to space, for mind does not occupy space. Care must be taken not to identify the word in, as used above, with of, from, out of, in the sense of separation, removal, or division, for we have seen that ultimate reality is indivisible and inseparable. Its unity and oneness cannot be impaired or destroyed. We are asked to consider creation in spirit and yet not of or from it. The creation must be accomplished without separation, division, or partition, and also without actual change in the essence, nature, substance, and being of that in which it is created. The necessities of the case require clear and subtle thought. Let us first consider the various forms of creation familiar to us in the phenomenal world, that we may understand the nature of the creation of the phenomenal universe in spirit and yet not of or from it. Creation from materials. The most familiar form of creation is that in which something is created from materials. Man creates boats, shoes, knives, houses, textiles in this way. But a moment's thought will show us that spirit cannot create the phenomenal universe in this manner. In the first place, there are no materials outside of itself from which it could so create. There is no outside and there is nothing other than itself. In the second place, it could not create from the material or substance of itself, for that would necessitate a separation, division, and partition of itself for the purpose of the creation. And the creation when completed would then be apart from its creator, divided and subtracted from it. Division and partition of, or subtraction from, spirit is unthinkable, as we have seen in our inquiry. In the third place, the creation cannot be made from nothing, for something can never come from nothing. Procreation. Another familiar form of creation is that known as begetting or procreation, which is familiar to us in the natural processes of animal birth. Spirit cannot create the phenomenal universe in this way, for begetting or procreation is but a form of division or subtraction. The procreated thing is always divided or subtracted from the parent thing. This is true in all birth, from that of the single cell to the higher forms of life, and even in the inorganic world in cases where the new forms are created from the material or substance of the old. Moreover, even were this possible, the procreated thing would be the young of its parent. The young of spirit is unthinkable. Each young absolute would be a replica of the parent absolute, an absurd idea. Were the young spirits, there would no longer be spirit, the ultimate reality, but, instead, many spirits, many ultimate realities, none of which would be ultimate, none absolute, none infinite, none total, none independent. The conception of anything being procreated from ultimate reality belongs to the child mind of the race, and flatly contradicts the report of the reason. The test of the axioms of being, which rise from the report of the highest reason, effectively disposes of this fallacious conception. Creation by change of form. A third form of creation is that in which the creation arises by reason of a change in the form, shape, activity, or appearance of the substance of the creator. A familiar instance of this form of creation is that in which a whirlpool appears in the running stream, or a wave upon the surface of the river, or, in a more permanent condition, the appearance of lumps of ice in a body of water, crystals in the mother fluid, or lumps of butter in the cream, or, again, that in which motion is transformed into heat or light. The transformation of energy into various forms, as we have seen, affords us excellent and convincing examples of this form of creation. Certain scientists have assumed that matter may have arisen from knots or rings formed in the universal ether. In this way materialism has sought to account for the variety apparent in the phenomenal universe. A little analytical consideration, however, reveals the fact that the above-cited instances and their kind are in reality not creations in the true sense of the word, but rather are transformations. The whirlpool or wave and the stream is but the temporary change of form resulting from the effect of motion. The wave results from imparted motion, the whirlpool from arrested motion, in each case the effect being produced in matter. Again, the lumps of ice and the crystals are merely changes of molecular arrangement, molecules being incidents and parts of matter, the creation being merely a change in the particles of the particular kind of matter. The lumps of butter arise from the separation of one constituent or part of the cream from the other. Heat, light, and other forms of energy arise from matter whose vibrations have been raised by motion. Strictly speaking, there is no such thing as heat or light in themselves. There is only heated matter or lighted matter. The waves of heat and light traveling in the ether from the sun are neither heat nor light, but are merely waves in the ether. The space through which they travel is neither heated nor lighted. Space is absolutely cold and absolutely dark. It is only when the waves come in contact with air or other matter that light and heat result. Light and heat, therefore, as we know them, are merely rates of vibration of matter, and can scarcely be considered as created things. They are, rather, conditions of things. Likewise, the transformation of energy and force is simply the effect of motion upon matter. None of the so-called manifestations of energy and force are really such. They are merely material objects energized by force. They have simply experienced change of condition. In all the so-called changes of energy there is found but a changed condition of matter. The energy has not changed at all. Take away the matter and we would perceive no changes or transformations of energy. The theory of matter being created by knots or rings in the universal ether does not meet the requirements of science. The universal ether is not something that can be twisted or knotted. Even if there were anything in existence to so twist or knot it, our examination shows that this class of creations are not creations at all. Moreover, spirit cannot create in this way, i.e., by changes in its particles, for it has no particles, nor by separation of its constituent parts, for it has no constituent parts, nor by change of its form, for it has no form, nor by arrangement of its molecules, for it has no molecules, nor by playing its energy upon matter, for there is no matter originally for it to play upon, nor by raising its rate of vibrations, for it has nothing to vibrate, no particles to be subject to motion, no material to be vibrated, neither has it anything to be knotted or ringed, it not being material. And, above all, we have seen that it is unchangeable, invariable, constant, and immutable. It cannot be thought of as subject to any of the above changes in itself, which are but characteristics of matter, from which immaterial reality must be free. Spirit, which is ultimate reality, cannot be thought of or considered in terms of matter. Of every quality of matter spirit must be freed in thought. Naming each quality, property, attribute, and characteristic of matter, we must ever say net I, not this, not that in our consideration of spirit. The changing absolute. But this fallacy of the changing absolute is not confined to the school of materialism. Some forms of pantheism, and what may be called conditional monism, hold that the one ultimate reality, the absolute, manifests as and assumes many shapes and forms in phenomenal appearance by becoming the relative things of phenomenal life. They hold that the one becomes the many in this way. An analysis, however, shows that this becoming would really mean either 1. A division, partition, or separation of the one absolute into parts, personalities, and separated activities, or else 2. A series of distinct changes in the absolute. Either or both of these suppositions are unthinkable regarding the absolute. The axioms of reality serve to utterly confute these fallacies. Ultimate reality, the absolute, can never be divided, separated, or partitioned into parts or personalities. Neither can it change in shape, form, activity, or in any other way in any degree whatsoever and still remain the absolute. Absolute being must always remain absolute. Becoming is an incident of phenomenal appearance and has not existence in fact or truth in absolute being. Emanation and reflection. Another apparently plausible theory is advanced regarding creation, in which the phenomenal universe, with its varied forms, shapes, and personalities, is explained as being an emanation or a reflection of the one ultimate reality, being of it and yet not in it nor yet itself. This idea of emanation is likened to the fragrance of the rose, which, while not the rose itself, nor in it, is nevertheless of the rose. This figure is as faulty as the concept which it seeks to illustrate. The fragrance of the rose is not a subtle, immaterial something flowing from it without partaking of its substance. It is really composed of minute particles of the substance of the rose from which it is cast off. An emanation from spirit would have to be composed of particles of the substance of spirit. But spirit can have no particles to cast off. Neither can it be divided or separated in any way whatsoever. This idea of emanation is but a cleverly disguised and subtle form of the idea of creation by division and separation. The idea of reflection is likened to the one sun reflecting its image in millions of falling raindrops or in millions of jars of water. The idea sought to be illustrated in this figure is that, although there be but the one sun, the reflections result in the appearance of the many. This figure, like the theory, also is faulty. One naturally asks for information regarding the nature and cause of the raindrops and the jars. Spirit has no raindrops of its own substance nor jars of its own being to catch the reflection of itself. Neither is the room or material outside of spirit for the creation of them. There can be no reflections of spirit unless there is something to catch the rays. If we assert that spirit creates the cosmic reflecting material, then we are back again to the question of the how of creation. Instead of answering the question we have simply removed it one more step. This conception, also, is but another cleverly disguised version of the theory of separation and division and must be discarded.